Hello, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to talk some more about plate tectonics. So hopefully you watched the brain pop above. We are going to take some notes on a paper that looks like this right here. So I want to show you where you can find this paper in the Files tab. So we're going to come to Virtual Academy Science. Surely y'all know how to get to the Files tab, but I'm going to show you again anyway. We're going to come up here to the Files tab. Y'all see it up here? We're going to click on that. We're going to click on Class Materials, and then we're going to go down to Unit 8, Earth's Layers and Plates, Student Resources. And then in here, you see where we have Earth's Plates Concept Builder. That's the one we're looking at. So we'll click on that right there, and it'll show you this paper right here that we're going to be taking notes on. I have one that's already filled in with the notes that we're going to put on this paper right here. And then page 2 is an empty one. So if you have a printer and you want to print this off, you're more than welcome to. If you don't have a printer, you can do this on a blank piece of paper. And just draw your boxes here, make you some arrows, take some notes with me. It'll be a good time. Feel free to push pause anytime you need, and then you can catch up with us in the video, okay? So I'm going to go over here to the notes page, and we're going to start talking about plate tectonics. So I'm going to kind of zoom in so we can see everything that's going on here, okay? So why do they think the plates move? Do y'all remember seeing in the videos or me talking, maybe even in Earth's layers, we talked about why the plates move? Well, they move because of those convection currents in Earth's mantle. So right here, we're going to write convection currents in the mantle. I'm going to draw some arrows going down and an arrow going up so we know we're looking for those circular currents in Earth's mantle, okay? So let's come over here to the different types of boundaries. So we've got 3 different types of boundaries. We've got convergent boundaries. We learned this in our vocab yesterday. We've got divergent boundaries. And we have transform boundaries. So I want you guys to put your hands up like this for a minute, okay? So convergent boundaries, if we have 2 plates, so 2 of Earth's plates, and if they move towards each other, these are convergent boundaries. So I want to see you moving your hands, putting them towards each other, okay? So anytime we've got plates moving towards each other, we've got convergent boundaries, okay? Now put your hands up like this. They're already touching. And now take them apart slowly. These are divergent boundaries. So when the plates are already together and then they're moving away from each other, that's a divergent boundary, okay? And then put them next to each other again. And we're going to slide one plate past the other one. This is a transform boundary. So convergent is when they're coming together. Divergent is when they're moving away. And transform is when they're sliding past each other, okay? Hopefully that'll help you guys remember. So our information right here, I'm going to draw 2 arrows moving towards each other. So when we see convergent boundaries, plates are going to collide. They're going to collide because they're moving towards each other, okay? So divergent boundaries form when plates move away from each other, right? So they're moving this way. So I'm going to put 2 arrows going away from each other here. And then I'm going to go ahead and write move away from each other in this box. So move away from each other. Okay. So the last one here, those transform boundaries, you remember those are the ones that are sliding past each other. I'm going to put an arrow on the bottom facing this way and an arrow on the top facing this way. And that'll show that they're sliding past each other, okay? And that's what we're going to put in this box. Slide past each other. Okay? So we got convergent, they're moving towards each other. Divergent, they're spreading apart, they're moving away from each other. And then the transform are the ones that slide past each other. So they look like that right there, okay? Let's look at convergent boundaries again. So what type of geological events happen when those plates collide, when they move towards each other at a convergent boundary? Well, we get mountains, trenches, and some volcanoes. We're going to talk more about convergent boundaries tomorrow because there's a couple cool things that happened at convergent boundaries because of the type of crust we have. You know, we have continental crust, which is the one we look out the window and we walk around on. And we have oceanic crust that's found under the ocean. Well, depending on which type of crust is moving towards each other at a convergent boundary, they do different things. But either way, convergent, they're moving towards each other. So some really cool locations where you can see mountains being built, trenches happening because of this conduction or convergent boundaries. We have the Himalayan mountains. Okay, I just kind of abbreviated that a little bit. Is that okay? And then the tallest mountain in the world is Mount Everest, and that's in the Himalayas. So I'm going to put Mount Everest right here. So Mount Everest and the Himalayan mountains, they are still converging. Those two plate boundaries are still bumping into each other, and those mountains are still being built. They're actually growing about 1 centimeter to 2 centimeters a year in those Himalayan mountains. Kind of cool, right? I think that's like just the coolest thing ever. And then a good example of a trench being built would be the Mariana Trench. I'm not sure if I said that right, but okay. So there's some good examples, some locations, things that happen at a convergent boundary when plates move towards each other. Next, we're going to talk about a divergent boundary where the plates are moving away from each other, okay? So what type of stuff happens when plates move away from each other? Well, new crust is built. New crust happens, and it's going to happen at a ridge or a rift. So I'm going to put ridge and rift right here. And we're going to get more into exactly what those two things are tomorrow. But some good locations that you might see a ridge or a rift. We have the Mid-Atlantic ridge. And that's under the Atlantic Ocean where the two plates are moving away from each other. There's a big line down the middle of the Atlantic Ocean and those plates are moving away from each other. Volcanoes are happening there because it's open all the way up. The crust has opened up and it's allowing that molten rock to come up. That molten rock cools and that's what creates the new crust. It's kind of cool. We also have the Great African Rift Valley. I think I've got a couple of cool videos that I'm going to show you about this, the ridge and the Rift Valley, because they're really, really, really cool things to see. Okay, so divergent boundaries, they're moving away from each other. We get some new crust, ridges and rifts. We've got the Mid-Atlantic Ridge and the Great African Rift Valley. Super cool. The next one we're going to talk about is a transform boundary. And the transform boundary is where they're sliding past each other. They're not going towards each other. They're not moving away. They're sliding past each other, okay? So what type of things happen at a transform boundary? Well, we get earthquakes and fault lines. So earthquakes and fault lines. And the best example I can think of right offhand is the San Andreas Fault in California. So I asked my students, yesterday if they've ever watched the movie with The Rock in it called San Andreas. Now that's a Hollywood version of what might happen at the San Andreas fault line, but it was still really cool, like from a geological standpoint. Kind of crazy, kind of wild, but really kind of cool. I like The Rock and I like that movie. But so what's happening at the San Andreas Fault? We have the Pacific Plate underneath the Pacific Ocean, and we have the North American Plate, and they're not moving away. They're not moving towards each other. They're sliding past each other, and that there are a lot of earthquakes that happen at that San Andreas Fault. Okay, I really hope this kind of helps wrap your mind around the different types of plate boundaries that we have. I'm looking forward to the days that come because I just love this part of science, earth science. It's awesome. Y'all are fantastic. I hope you have a wonderful day. Keep going because we've got a couple questions for you and a little activity to do. Find you some cars because you're going to need them, like little toy cars, you know. All right, bye y'all.